It's my pleasure on behalf of the Office of Child Care National Center on After-School and Summer Enrichment to welcome you to today's webinar on what data can tell us about school-age childcare and the Child Care and Development Fund, or CCDF. I'm Siobhan Braden, Director of Training and Technical Assistance. And in support of truth and reconciliation, I acknowledge that I'm participating today from current-day Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is located on the unceded homelands of the Massachusetts people who continue to live and thrive in this area. If you're just joining us now, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're participating from. It's great to see folks from Kansas, South Dakota, Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, or CNMI, California, and a number of other locations, including New York, Washington State. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us today. Many of you are likely familiar with NCASE, but for those that aren't, NCASE is part of the Office of Child Care National Child Care Technical Assistance Network. The Office of Child Care is part of the Administration for Children and Families under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. This network supports states, territories, and tribes in implementing the Child Care and Development Fund, CCDF, to provide families with low income who are working or participating in education with help paying for child care. And of course, our work is focused on school age, as you can tell by the name of our center. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Katari Coleman, Heidi Rosenberg, and Mary Colleton. During today's event, we'll provide a context for our data work, talk a bit about the development of the national, state, and territory data profiles, share about the interactive database, and then we definitely have some time set aside for Q&A and discussion, and we look forward to hearing from you and also to hearing your questions. Before we jump into our presentation, we'd like to hear from you. Mary, can you please launch our poll? There are 3 questions, so you'll need to scroll down to see all of them. Okay, and I see the polls coming up. So again, there are 3 questions. So please scroll down. The first one is asking about your role. The second one is asking if your role is other, can you please identify into which category you can fall? That helps us to know who's attending our events. And the final question is, what is your level of knowledge or awareness about the Office of Child Care school-age data profiles, which we'll be covering today. So let's give folks a couple minutes to participate, and then we'll see what we find. I see we have quite a few folks from CCDF lead agencies, state and territory. And we have quite a range of awareness of the resources that we'll be sharing today. And Mary, why don't we give people maybe 10 more seconds, and then we can close out the poll, and I'll just do a quick review of the results.
Okay, I'm going to end it.
Okay, great. So the majority of folks joining us today are with CCDF lead agencies. We also have folks from Child Care Resource and Referral, School Age Network, and NAA affiliates, quite a few program providers, staff, or directors. And we also are pleased to welcome folks from other agency staff, including education and licensing, and also welcome to our tribal lead agency staff. The majority of folks that put themselves as none of the above are with a state agency. And finally, it looks like the majority of folks say that they're minimally aware of the school age data profiles, which is great because you'll be learning a lot about them today, with an even split between not at all aware and moderately aware. And then a couple of folks are very aware. So that's great. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to ask my colleague, Katari Coleman, who's the NCASE project director, to share with us some information about the data profiles and why we have them, what the purpose is. So Katari, it's over to you.
Sure, if you could go back one slide.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. The goal of the NCASE data work is to tell the story of school-age childcare through enrollment statistics, state and territory policies, and state and territory system practices with specific focus on CCDF. We've included, and this is just a note, but we've included 5-year-olds in the school-age population, given the number of 5-year-olds in kindergarten and even in part day or part year pre-K programs who need care before or after school hours or during the summer months. The School Age Data Profile series first launched back in 2018 using CCDF enrollment data from fiscal year 2015, which was the most recent data available at that time. With assistance from our sibling National TA Center, Child Care Automated Reporting System, also known as CARS, we created a national data profile that aggregated and averaged data across all states and territories, as well as separate state and territory profiles. We also created a set of appendices with all data points from the profiles to give readers a way to see how enrollment data or school age related policies and practices varied across states and territories. This 2024 update is the 6th iteration of the profiles. And I'm going to pass this over to our research director, Heidi.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. I got into it's an online meeting, so I got in. I'm in there now, so I can talk. So what?
Hi, thanks, Katari, for that introduction. So the most recent data profile, as Katari mentioned, is the current one posted from 2024, and that uses the CCDF enrollment data from fiscal year 2021, which to date remains the most recent data available. Since we first started examining enrollment data, the percentage of children served through subsidies who are school age has held steady at 44 to 45% of the overall subsidy population. The average monthly number of school-age children served has fluctuated over that time, from a high of 635,000 children during fiscal year 2015 to a low of 585,000 in fiscal year 2020. The number of school-age children served in centers has seen a small but steady uptick over the 6 years of this work, increasing from 70% in the beginning, which was using fiscal year 2015 number, to 75% several years later. And while this percentage has dipped slightly, centers are still serving far more school-age children relative to family child care and home-based providers. Regarding trends in the number of school-age children served during the summer months, June through August, we have seen wide fluctuation in whether this number increases or decreases, as well as by how much, across states and territories throughout that 6 years that we've been examining this. We've also seen wide fluctuations in the number of states and territories that see a 10% or more increase in the number of school-age children served during the summer months, from a high of 30 states and territories to a low of 12, depending on the year. Go to the next slide. In addition to the enrollment data, the profiles also include information on state and territory policies and practices related to school age, which are gleaned from the CCDF plans and our scans of the consumer education websites. So we identified whether or not CCDF lead agencies include training and professional development to support the positive development of school-age children. Over the past 6 years, this number has increased from 47 to 50. We also look at whether states and territories use grants and contracts, and if so, whether those grants and contracts can be used to increase the supply and/or quality of school-age care. When we began this work, 22 states and territories used grants and contracts, and of those, 11 indicated that they could be used for school-age care. That number has increased slightly to 23 using grants and contracts, with 12 of those allowing them to be used to support school-age care. It's important to note that these policies are drawn from the triennial CCDF plans and thus represent a static data point from the time the plans are first released. It is very possible that by now, the number of states using these practices has changed. In addition to the CCDF plans, we also review each state's and territory's consumer education website to see whether the websites include features that can make it easier for parents of school-age children to search for care. We examine whether the websites include license-exempt providers, an inclusion that is not required, but rather at the discretion of the CCDF lead agency, as well as whether the website search results show the ages of children served by a provider and whether subsidy vouchers are accepted by a provider. We also examine whether website users can customize their child care search by filtering for age and subsidy acceptance to help narrow the range of options that might work for them. Over the time that we have examined these data points, a majority, 32, of websites have included license-exempt providers. 45 websites show the age range served by a provider, and 37 to 38 over that time allow users to filter their search by age. There has been a big increase in the number of websites that show whether or not providers accept subsidy vouchers, from 30 to 39, as well as websites including a filter so that parents can search for care by subsidy accepting providers, with the inclusion of that feature appearing on 31 websites, up from 21 when we first started scanning for this. The national profile also includes a reference to the number of statewide after-school networks and National After-School Association state affiliates in operation. The full report also includes a set of appendices which show all data points from the individual profiles to give readers a way to see how enrollment data or school age related policies and practices vary across states and territories. And in this easier to read excerpt showing just a few states' data, you can see that Appendix A includes the percent of all children served through subsidies who are school age in a state, the average monthly subsidy paid for school age childcare, and the average number of school age children served each month. The data profiles are housed in an interactive database that allows users to access either national or individual state and territory information. Users can click on the drop-down menu or click on the image of the state within the map below. The QR code and link to the database are on this slide, and Mary is also putting the link in the chat. The state and territory level information also includes a link to the individual profile, school age resources, and contact information for state or territory level staff who work on school age issues. And this is an example of the state level data profile. As you saw with the national aggregates the numbers up to the overall average. in the state and territory individual profile, you see the information specific to that state. So for example, here in Wisconsin, we see the state-specific information about the percent of all children served through subsidies who are school age, the average monthly amount paid for school age care through subsidy, the average monthly number served, the distribution of where school age children receive their care across centers, family child care home, and in their own home, as well as the, in this case, increase in the number of school age children served during the summertime months. It also includes a number of the children served in the state through the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program. And on the second page of the state profiles, state and territory profiles, you also see the individual indicators as to whether or not in that particular state or territory, the lead agency includes training to support the positive development of school-age children, the status of grants and contracts, and whether or not they can be used to support school-age care, whether or not the consumer education websites include license-exempt providers, and or whether or not the listings show the ages served and whether or not a provider accepts subsidies. You also see an indicator for whether or not in that state or territory there is a statewide after-school network and or a state National After-School Association state affiliate. And with that, I will turn things over to Katari again.
Thank you. Over the years, we've gathered feedback about the usefulness of the data profiles. Users have shared that the profiles provide them with a concise, visually engaging way to convey the importance of school age with the subsidy population, and have been helpful when talking with members of state level governance as well as other interested parties. In particular, the profiles have helped raise awareness of the full scope of the school age population within subsidy. The trends and variations we have seen in the enrollment data have sparked additional inquiries into policies that might influence the fluctuations we see, such as variations in whether there's an increase or a decrease in the number of school-age children served through subsidies during the summer months. Next. So, are there any questions in the chat? This is our Q&A time, and if you have any questions, you can place them in the chat.
I don't see any questions in the chat right now, Katari, but let's give people a minute to absorb the information that we've given them. Also, I'm not sure if folks have taken a chance to click on the link that Mary put in the chat to take a look at the data profiles and see if they might have questions. So let's just pause for a bit to see if people do have questions, and then we can go into our interactive conversation. Okay, well, I don't see any questions right now, so I'm going to stop sharing the slides, and I'm going to ask Rite to share our Padlet when so people can comment on the two questions that we'll ask you. And Rite, if you could also show folks how to post a sticky in case they haven't used Padlet before.
Absolutely.
Katari, do
Thank
you
you.
just want to let people know what our questions are? Hopefully everyone can see them.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you all are seeing the Padlet. We have two questions that we'd like to engage you all around. One is, we noticed from the poll that some of you are familiar with the profiles and some are not. If you're not familiar, we want to ask you, how might you use them? And if you are familiar with them and you've used them before, please do. It's great. Folks are already populating the Padlet. If you've never used it before, right under the question, you'll see a plus sign. If you click on that plus, it'll open a box. On my screen, it's in the lower right-hand corner. And in that box, you can write a comment. I will write, I love the profiles. And if you click publish, it will add your comment. And once you have so you can click the plus to continue to add comments. If you see a comment that really resonates with you, like I love the profiles, there's a little heart where you can indicate that you appreciate that comment. And if you want to add to it, you can even add a comment, as I will do there.
Thanks, Preeti. We do have a question in the chat. The question is, how can a state agency request to be listed as a resource for their state? I'm happy to answer that one, unless Heidi or Katari want to. Typically, the agency that we list is the Child Care and Development Fund lead agency. So if the person who asked that wants to reply to me and let me know that they are either with that agency or with another agency, because we are funded by the Office of Child Care and Development Fund, that is the primary contact that we list on as a resource. Oh, thank you. And Heidi just clarified for me that we do include the CCDF lead agency, the 21st Century Community Learning Center coordinator, the statewide after school network. And for childcare resource and referral, we tend to link to that national database. So, so if the person who asked wants to respond either to everyone or just to in the chat, we can help you get connected. And we try to keep these as up to date as possible, but if you see an inaccuracy in your state's profile, please let us know. And we can definitely update, because we know that there's can be quite a bit of turnover.
I love seeing some of the examples that are being populated here in the Padlet, and it's certainly some people have talked about using the profiles for advocacy with state or federal legislators to educate and inform newly elected officials. This certainly echoes a lot of what we have already heard from various folks who have been utilizing the profiles over the years. So it's nice to see some of that reflected in here as well. I would love to follow up on some of the comments that are here in the Padlet if folks are able to go back in who made these comments to expand a bit. But I'm really intrigued by the comment about being able to use these to help with credentialing efforts and how you envision them being able to be used in that way. We'd love to see if there's something that we might be able to help just broadcast further, if that's another way that we could think about using them. And then the question here about affirming just how many children served by CCDF in school age also echoes something we have heard a lot, especially with that inclusion of the 5-year-old population, because reflecting the fact that many of those kids are in kindergarten or in pre-K programs where they need that before and after school care and or summertime care. And that really does help to show just what a large percentage of the subsidy population is in this critically important group. So we're happy to hear that that also echoes other people's findings as well.
Katie, we have another question in the chat, which is, do the school age resources vary by state? And I'm wondering if that person might want to provide a little bit more clarification to that question. Joy, would you be able to specify a bit more about what you are asking?
Sure, just looking at, I'm from New York, and so when I open it said school aid resources and it clicks just to the ACF page, and I was just wondering if it's just like a main link that is on all the state pages, or if there's variation, or is there a discussion about variation for the resources?
So if you're And so all of the states link to the child care licensing regulation database. What we use this for is just a way to connect folks to another set of information that pertain to school age care, where they can also search by state there. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but if not, you can let me know.
Yeah, that answers it. Thank you.
So there's a question posed within the Padlet about, does the data show where school age services are needed? I don't know that I would suggest using this for that particular purpose. It's not meant to be a mapping resource in terms of where school age providers exist relative to where their demand. There are some other mapping related resources that exist out there that are not specific to school age necessarily, but that are looking at that interplay of where children live and where providers are located. But this is not the primary purpose of this. This is essentially meant to show you what is the status of the school age population in a given state and territory, and different elements of CCDF that come into play, the average amount of subsidy paid out, where the children are served, because as you can see from scanning the appendices, that varies too, even though it hovers around 3/4 or the majority served in centers versus home-based. That does vary by state. And so the appendices can give you a sense of where there might be a greater proportion of children served through home-based family childcare and centers, and where they're not. And I think somebody even put in the Padlet too that that's a nice use of the appendices, is being able to quickly scan and see across states and territories how things are similar or different.
I really want to acknowledge the practical use that folks have shared uh, in the Padlet, like to find quick facts about other states. And, just to know current statistics so they can inform their audience, whether it's families, whether it's providers. And so we're just happy that it is utilized to meet the needs of varied audiences. Our major and primary audience are the CCDF lead agency staff, but we're happy that this has allowed state after school networks and folks that are working and advocate on behalf of the school age population to have more information or share more information about what is going on in their state or territory, or even give a national perspective of what's going on. And this is one of our, I say, premier resources that has, I think, been utilized a great deal.
And one thing I think we didn't mention at the end of our presentation is, you heard me say that the information on that second page of the profiles come from the CCDF plans, which we recognize do serve as a bit of a static data point. For this upcoming set of profiles that we'll begin working on this year, we'll be utilizing not only the next set of enrollment data, which would represent fiscal year 2022 when those are available, but we will also be making use of the new CCDF plans that will be posted in the upcoming winter. And so the next set of profiles that we have will represent a refresh of that scan of all of the policies and practices from the CCDF plan, as well as the updated enrollment data from fiscal year 2022 when they're available. And of course, what we always do is, before we get set to publish, we do our own repeat scan of all of the consumer ed websites to make sure that our understanding of those features on the website is up to date. Because as we noted, we've seen a big increase over that time of the number of websites that have added helpful features like the inclusion of whether or not providers are accepting subsidies, and even the ability to customize a search to tailor that at the outset.
I just want to note the how have you used school age data profiles relationships? That is key. I think that is without saying, that is the purpose of any information that is collected, is to build attain a level of awareness and knowledge of something, and then to build the relationships to get the work done.
Great to see all these ideas and existing strategies that people are sharing. Why don't we just keep this open for another minute or two, and then we can wrap up.
In response to Phil's comment in the chat, that's a great idea. To do a case study of such, to look at policy around research-based practices. Thanks, Philip.
One thing we have been diving into more is trying to understand more about what's behind some of the fluctuations that we see, and especially with the variations in the number of school-age children served during the summer months, because we know that all school-age children are in need of some type of care and coverage during the summer months. And so we're working with some of our partners to try to see if we can understand more about why we see the variations that we do across states and territories in that regard. And we're also hoping to dig a little more into details that states provide about what they mean by supporting the positive development of school-age children. So Phil, I think that gets a bit to your comment of trying to go into more about what does this mean. We may know whether or not a practice is noted as being in place, but we'd like to know a little bit more detail about what does that actually look like in practice, and if possible, be able to elevate some examples.
Thanks, everybody, for sharing your existing strategies and your ideas. And I see that the New York folks just posted at the top that they can link directly from their childcare data page, which is fantastic. That's a great idea. And we're excited to share these with you, and also for folks that are new to them. And then we're also excited to hear about folks that already have been using the data profiles and some of the strategies that you've used. So, Prite, I think we can stop sharing the Padlet now, and people can jump in for a couple more minutes if you want to share. And I'm going to bring us back to our deck and wrap us up. Am I sharing the deck, colleagues, with no notes?
Yes, you are.
Alrighty. Before we wrap up today, we want to let you know, if you're not familiar with it, about the NCASE Resource Library, which is a curated collection of a variety of materials related to out-of-school time care. It includes tip sheets, briefs, reports, toolkits, and webinar recordings, along with research from a wide range of subject matter experts and organizations. So in addition to NCASE resources, it's got a very wide purview of resources from other organizations. And so we do update it every quarter. So it's definitely worth revisiting and coming back to see if there are new materials. In addition to offering webinars like today's events and resources, We also offer peer learning opportunities and individualized technical assistance to states, territories, and tribes on a variety of out-of-school time topics, including quality systems, workforce, mental health, licensing, and cross-sector collaboration. So I know we've had the opportunity to support some of you individually and through peer learning in the past, and hope to have the opportunity to support others as well if we haven't had a chance to work with you before. Before we wrap up today, we really appreciate you taking a couple of minutes to provide us with feedback on today's event so we can continually improve our services. Mary's going to put the link in the chat, and we'd appreciate it if you can take just a couple of minutes to complete that now, because we do use these results to inform our work. And we will keep the room open until the top of the hour so people can see the link. And also, if people do have additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat. The purpose of this event, as we've said, is really to give you an opportunity to explore this resource and also to think about how you might use and share how you have used it. So we really appreciate everybody having done that. And I think Mary has put that link in the chat. Great. And she's also put the link to the resource library. So when you're finished with that, we'll just thank you for joining us, and we will send out a link to the recording and the slides when they have been posted on the Office of Child Care Training and Technical Assistance website. Thanks so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.